Now on Venezuela. Donald Trump has turned the Caribbean into a dangerous tinderbox. Today we have more troops off the coast of South America than we've had in decades. U.S. forces have struck at least 20 alleged drug boats with zero independent evidence, no transparency, and no concrete legal justification. And on Saturday, Donald Trump proclaimed that the airspace above and surrounding Venezuela to be closed in its entirety. What does this mean? We have no clue, because Donald Trump said a few hours later not to, quote, read anything into it. The erraticness of his foreign policy is dangerous in itself, saying one thing one day and one thing the next. And so, Americans are right to wonder, what on earth is Donald Trump planning in Venezuela? Is Donald Trump nudging America into another war? Is he seeking regime change for Maduro? Will he put U.S. troops in harm's way? Nobody knows. All we have is a bunch of contradictory statements from Trump. Donald Trump seems to be planning a war totally in secret, without congressional authorization, without any transparency, without any explanation for what his goals even are. And all it takes is one mistake, one miscalculation, one lapse in judgment from either side, and suddenly our troops could find themselves in an armed conflict with Venezuela. Lives could be lost. American security could suffer. So I want to be very, very clear. If Donald Trump proceeds with his plan to conduct strikes against Venezuela, Senators Kaine, Paul, and I will immediately file a war powers resolution to force congressional action to block the use of troops in Venezuela. The power to declare war lies in the hands of Congress, and we intend to exert that authority should the need arise. Now, I urge my Republican colleagues to work with us to advance this resolution if it becomes necessary, because the thought of another forever war makes Americans sick to their stomachs. Americans are tired of seeing troops bogged down in one country after the other. Americans do not want a pointless war in Venezuela. And Donald Trump does not have the authority to send our troops into harm's way without authorization from Congress. Should Donald Trump proceed, the Senate will immediately respond. Should a strike occur, we will force a debate in Congress and force a vote to prevent the U.S. troops to be in hostilities against Venezuela. Our troops' safety and our national security is at stake. I urge both sides to stand ready to assert the powers of Congress on matters of war and peace should the need arise, because the rules of the Congress allow us to require a vote on this issue should the need arise. On Hegseth, I want to say a word about Secretary Hegseth. I don't think we have ever seen someone so unserious, so childish, so obviously insecure serving as Secretary of Defense as Pete Hegseth. And that should alarm every single one of us. Secretary Hegseth loves to look tough. He loves to boast about the lethality of our forces. He wants to be taken seriously, but yesterday he posted a ridiculous tweet of a cartoon turtle firing on alleged drug traffickers, a sick parody of a well-known children's book. This man is a national embarrassment. Tweeting memes in the middle of a potential armed conflict is something no serious leader would ever even think of doing. The only thing this tweet accomplishes is to remind the world that Pete Hegseth is not up to the job. But of course, this is much more serious than memes on Twitter. A few days ago, the Washington Post reported that Secretary Hegseth gave a spoken directive to kill all the occupants of the first alleged drug boat struck by U.S. forces. If the reports in the Washington Post are accurate, this may expose those involved to legal consequences. What we need right now, more than anything else, is the truth, the facts, which is precisely what Secretary Hegseth has refused to give. There are tapes in the possession of the Department of Defense that would show exactly what happened during these military strikes. Secretary Hegseth has an obligation to be truthful, so he should release those tapes. He says the Washington Post account is not correct, so why not release the tapes and prove it? If he refuses to release these tapes, it calls into question the truthfulness of his account. The tapes will show one way or the other what happened and whether Hegseth is telling the truth. If Secretary Hegseth has nothing to hide, he should not fear being truthful. In the meantime, Republicans in the House and Senate, including the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, have promised, quote, vigorous oversight on these strikes. This is very encouraging, and I thank them for working in a bipartisan way on this matter. But now Republicans in both chambers must follow through. We need congressional hearings. We need full and transparent briefings from the Pentagon. And most importantly, the committees should continue to demand Secretary Hegseth release the tapes. This is such a serious matter that Secretary Hegseth himself should come before the Congress to testify under oath about the nature of his order, the evidence supporting the strikes, and an explanation for what the goals are in Venezuela. With our troops standing on a knife's edge in the Caribbean, we need a Secretary of Defense who can prove himself to be serious, sober-minded, and someone of high character. Sadly, Hegseth has the opposite of each of these qualities.